Ravens fans, we've got not just one, but we've got two awesome little Ravens rumors, nuggets to talk about on today's show. We're going to start us off with a possible Chris Olave trade. Last Word on Sports wrote an article talking about best fits for the wide receiver out of New Orleans, and Baltimore was listed. We'll dive into that. And then on the back half, Jeff Zreback from The Athletic gave an awesome update on where the Baltimore Ravens stand with Jadeveon Clowney and if he thinks it's going to end up happening or not. Before we get into any of today's content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Not only does it give you guys a solid by, keeping the channel around, getting you locked in on your Baltimore Ravens every single day right here, but also it helps us bury the Chiefs report because we've been in a month-long sub battle with them, and they actually are winning as of right now. Only by 9 subs. It's very close. I need at least 10 diehard, loyal Baltimore Ravens fans to do me one big favor. Hit that big red sub button. Alrighty, let's start off with Chris Olave, the wide receiver with the New Orleans Saints, did his college time at The Ohio State University, and it seems random to be talking about a Chris Olave trade, and actually it's not really after what happened this past weekend. Derek Carr, out of nowhere, I don't know, Moose, if you were as shocked as I was, but very early on Saturday morning, I was in the middle of an 8-mile run, actually, not to pat myself on the back, announced his retirement. And so that kind of got people thinking, myself included, could this mean a total just revamp of the New Orleans Saints? Could they be going into full tank mode, trying to get as many players, as many picks as they can to, see if they can salvage what they have and create something new in the future? Well, here's what David Latham had to say at a possible Chris Olave trade. Chris Olave is a high-risk, high-reward player with a wide range of outcomes. Rashad Bateman, meanwhile, is a safer player who lacks that 1,000-yard upside Olave brings to the table. Player-for-player trades are rare in today's NFL, but it makes sense in this specific condition. The Ravens need a home run hitter to overcome a loaded AFC, while the Saints need somebody who can stay on the field and support their young quarterbacks. Now, Latham did make some good points, I will say that, but also I got one big disagreement with him. He said Rashad Bateman lacks a 1,000-yard upside. And I disagree, okay? Because I believe that if he was anywhere in any offense that didn't have the best running back in football, a really great tight end room, another great receiver, and also the best running quarterback in the history of this game, I feel like he could be a wide receiver that gets 1,000 yards. Hell, he was very close to it in 2024 when he had to share the rock, when he had to share the ball, when he had to share everything with all those other good players that I just mentioned. 756 yards through the air on 45 catches, almost 17 yards a catch, and he found pay dirt 9 separate times. But we're here to talk about Chris Olave. And I will say, Chris Olave would bring something different that Rashod Bateman doesn't. I think Chris Olave's ceiling might be a little bit higher. That doesn't mean that I don't think Rashod Bateman's a great player. That doesn't mean that I don't think Rashod Bateman is really, really great on this roster and fits really, really well. It just means that they're two different players. They have two different skill sets, and one might be a little bit stronger than the other, in my opinion. But I want to hear from you guys, okay? Who would you rather? Would you rather have Rashod Bateman, or would you rather have Chris Olave? I could see either way. I could go either way. I'd be happy with both, but I want to hear what you guys want to tell me in the comment section down below. If it's Rashod Bateman, go ahead and give me those RBs. And if it's Chris Olave, do me your best Colorado impression and type those COs. With all that being said about how much I love Rashod Bateman, if Olave is healthy, he is incredibly dangerous. And that's been the biggest, scratch and knock on Olave's game is his lack of being able to stay healthy. But I also will combat that with he hasn't played for quarterbacks that have really set him up in really great positions. He's dealt with some concussions. He's dealt with having to catch some hospital balls. And hopefully that changes with Tyler Shuck at the quarterback spot, but I don't necessarily know that it will. And what we do know about this, when talking about a Chris Olave and Rashod Bateman trade, is we know that Bateman has been on the trade block. Now, Baltimore didn't end up pulling the trigger, and let me be clear here, I'm very happy they didn't end up pulling that trigger, but Jordan Schultz dropped kind of a bomb late in the afternoon on Friday, saying during their pursuit of wide receiver, the Cowboys also looked to do a trade for the Ravens wide receiver Rashod Bateman. Those talks didn't go far, and Dallas ultimately struck a post-draft deal with the Steelers for George Pickens. And then Nick Harris, a beat writer for the Dallas Cowboys, followed that up with, "Can confirm." Bateman was an option that was sought out by Dallas at the draft, and the two sides couldn't meet on an agreement. Pickens' talent paired with the price to acquire ended up being the more enticing option for the Cowboys. So that is one thing we do know, that Rashad Bateman was on the trade block. Now, I don't know how long those talks progressed. I really don't. It kind of sounds like they didn't last very long, but also Nick Harris makes it seem that they were talking about it because he said the two sides couldn't really come to an agreement. So you know he was out there. But with all that being said about Rashad Bateman being traded, I think the reason they didn't pull the trigger with Dallas was because Baltimore's happy with their wide receivers. I think that they ultimately saw what Dallas was probably going to offer them. Not much. If they gave a third for George Pickens, I don't necessarily believe that they're willing to offer a ton for Rashad Bateman. I don't know if they were offering a third. Probably not. I think Baltimore would take that. But I think at the end of the day, Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh looked at their wide receivers and are currently looking at them and they're saying, you know what? I feel good with where we are. So I don't really see a Chris Olave trade happening. I think that would very much surprise me. I think if they didn't do it with Dallas, I think they're at the point where like, okay, we're not going to make any big swings in that room because we're happy with where it is. We feel like we got a lot of good guys there as of right now. A little bit of a programming reminder, okay? We are live today, later. 5 p.m. Eastern time is when we go live. Me and producer Jack, we got 3 segments planned for you guys. We'll be live for about an hour. To make sure you don't miss it, you got to do 2 things. Hit the subscribe button. Also, turn on those notifications. Hit that big bell. So that way, whenever we go live, you get notified. You can come and hang out with us. Coming up, we're talking about a little bit of a Jadeveon Clowney reunion. Jeff Zreback weighed in on the former Baltimore Raven and talked a little bit about how probable it is, how improbable it is, and what Baltimore kind of has to decide if they're going to add him back. Before that, a guy they already got on the roster, a guy who's actually wearing Jadeveon Clowney's old number 24, is our number 1 or first round draft pick, Malaki Starks. And if you guys want to be repping him for the long run, make sure to go to chatsports.com/Starks. Get that jersey. You can get it in purple. You can get it white. You can get it in black. Any size, any color, and honestly, any player they got right there at Fanatics. But chatsports.com/Starks is where you will find Malaki Starks' jersey. If you guys want to get a hold of it, it's just going to be down in the comments and description of today's video. This is one you're probably going to have for a very long time. I've got a feeling that, guys like Zach Orr, John Harbaugh, they're going to fall in love with a safety prospect. They're going to want him in Baltimore for a long time, so you should rep his jersey just like that. Chatsports.com/Starks. All right, let's move on to segment number 2. Is a Jadeveon Clowney reunion coming soon? We talked about this late last week, and it was all kind of being talked about because we heard from a couple different people on social media that it could actually happen. John Frischella tweeted out, Jadeveon Clowney to the Baltimore Ravens is, quotes, picking up steam per sources. And then Jordan Schultz tweeted right when the news came down about Jadeveon Clowney. He said he should have a solid market, but just thinking out loud, he feels like a classic late offseason signing for the Ravens. He had a strong one-year stint there in 2023, finishing with 9.5 sacks. And I don't think anybody's arguing with the fact that he'd fit in well with Baltimore. But the big question is will Baltimore have the room for a guy like Clowney? Here's what Jeff Zreback had to say. Clowney is a proven NFL commodity, which is more than you could say about Isaac, Ajabo, and Green. Clowney is a 3-time Pro Bowler and has 58 career sacks. For a Ravens team desperately trying to get over the hump of the playoffs, there's certainly something to be said for knowing what you are going to get from a proven veteran rather than hoping for a breakout from a young player. The Ravens are a draft and develop team, and they typically lean toward rewarding their own with opportunities before going outside for help. In other words, how they approach Clowney's availability will tell us more about their evaluations of their own young edge rushers than it will about their feelings about Clowney. So basically, in my opinion, what Jeff's kind of saying there is if it happens, I don't think it's going to happen soon. Because they're going to make that decision based on how they believe going into 2025, their young edge rushers on that team have progressed. And they've got a lot of really, really young edge rushers on that team. They just added in Mike Green in the NFL draft. They've got Adisa Isaac, who they drafted last year but didn't really play at all because of the injuries. Odafe Owe is still relatively young. And then, of course, you got David Ajabo, a guy who I kind of am more leaning towards believing that he's going to get cut before they do the 53-man roster. And so they've got a ton of young players in that room. They've got a ton of young talent in that room. But what John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta and Zach Orr, what they've got to figure out is, do we believe more in the future of these young guys? Or do we think that they're not going to give us much, maybe in the rest of their careers? Let's just take a shot. Sign Jadeveon Clowney, have him give us one more really good year, and see if we can go win a freaking Super Bowl. Because that's always going to be the goal for a team that's as stacked as this one is. For a team that made it to the divisional round last year, for the team that made it to the AFC Championship the year before that, for a team that has Lamar Jackson, it's all about winning a Super Bowl. And when you look at the offensive line room, you got the youth, you got the veterans, a perfect little mix of both, and you just got to weigh which is more beneficial for your team. Adding in another veteran or riding out the youth that you've already got. And that's going to be the big decision that they've got to make over the next couple of weeks, or I guess over the next couple of months. I want you guys to be Eric DeCosta for me, though. Would you sign Jadeveon Clowney? If you would, go ahead, type C for sign. And if you wouldn't, if you're saying for some reason, I kind of want to stay away from him, go ahead and give me a P for pass. Make sure you guys get your answers in the comment section down below. We're going to get on out of here, but don't worry, you'll be seeing me a lot later today. 5 p.m. Eastern time reminder is when we're going live. To not miss a moment, to not miss later today, make sure you guys do one thing for me. Hit that subscribe button and join us right here on the Ravens Rundown.